Welcome learners. In the previous session, I had discussed the structure and dynamics of tribal economy in India. I had also discussed the characteristics of tribal economic systems in India, such as forest-based economy, familial mode of production, simple technology, absence of profit motive, economic cooperation, gift and ceremonial exchange, periodical markets, etc. In this session, I will explain the economic classification of tribes in India. I will elaborate on the types of occupations followed by different tribes in the country. I will also explain the dynamic forces and process of economic change in tribal India. Let us understand the economic classification of tribes in India. The tribes of India subsist on a number of occupations. Interestingly, the economic lives of the tribes in India exist at different grades. There are significant differences in the pattern of their occupation and the livelihood options exercised. According to Vidyarthi and Rai, tribal economies are complex systems as a tribe generally uses all available means to eke out its subsistence and combines minor forest produce collection with settled agriculture or shifting cultivation, simple cultivation with food collection. Yet each tribe has a primary means of survival. On this basis, some anthropologists have attempted economic classification of tribes in India. Vidyarthi and Rai have proposed a comprehensive eightfold economic typology of tribes in India. They have taken into consideration various classifications suggested by other anthropologists. The economic typology of tribes in India are the forest hunting type, the hill cultivation or shifting cultivation type, the plain agriculture type, the simple artisan type, the pastoral and cattle herder type, the folk artist type, the agricultural and non-agricultural labor type, and the skilled white collar job and traders type. Let us briefly examine these 8 economic typology of tribes in India. Let us see the forest hunting type. The livelihood of tribes mainly depends on collection of minor forest produce, hunting of wild animals, and fishing in the shallow waters of the forest. They collect edible roots, tubers, fruits, nuts, flowers, leaves, fiber, bamboo, honey, wax, etc. for their subsistence. Most of them hunt deer, hares, monkeys, birds, and fish. They use simple indigenous tools such as digging sticks, iron jungle knives, earthen, wooden, or bamboo pots and vessels, bamboo baskets, and sticks for food gathering. In hunting, they employ different types of traps and weapons. The availability and adequacy of food from these sources differ according to season, cycle, area, and the rainfall. The Rajis in the Himalayan region, Birhors, the Hill Kharias, the Paharias, the Birjias, and the Korwas in the Middle India belong to this category. Likewise, the Juangs in Orissa, Hill Maria Gonds of Bastar, Chenchus, Yanadis, Kadars, Pantarams, Kurumbas, and the Palians of South India are also hunters and food gatherers. The tribes of this type constitute a small population, which is about 1,000. They are simple life, they have simple life and social organization, and their settlement generally consists of 5 to 15 huts. In them, the family work as a productive unit, and the villagers work as an economic unit at times. These tribes are switching over from forest hunting as a primary source of livelihood to agriculture. Let us now see the hill cultivation or shifting cultivation type of tribes. The tribal groups, depending on cultivation for livelihood, rely on their skills and hard labor in cultivation. They rely on any of the 3 types of cultivation for their survival and sustenance. The 3 types of cultivation includes slash and burn cultivation with the help of digging sticks, hoe and burn cultivation, and terrace cultivation in the hill areas with the help of natural irrigational sources. The tribes who subsist on the first two types of hill cultivation, in addition to that, depend on food gathering and hunting for survival. Under the shifting cultivation, the tribal cultivators switch over from the field, which is not productive enough, to new field. They do not cultivate a piece of land forever as the settled cultivators do. Hill cultivation is seasonal in nature and widely practiced by many tribes in northeast India, the middle India, while some in South India also practice the same. Mizos, Garos, and Nagars, Chakmas, etc. in the northeast, Malays, Hilkhariyas, Pahariyas, and Birjias in middle India, Muka, Dhoras, Malay Kudiyas in South India belong to this economic category of tribes. A notable proportion of tribal population in India depend on shifting cultivation. According to Government of India, over 6 lakh tribal families in the northeastern states, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, and Himachal Pradesh, practice shifting cultivation on a continuous basis as per the ninth 5-year plan period. The major problems with this type of cultivation are ecological degradation, low productivity, and low standard of living. Hence, the incidence of poverty is very high in the areas where this type of cultivation is practiced. Let us now see the plain agriculture tribes. The predominant occupation of the tribal population in India is that of settled agriculture or plain agriculture. In its simpler form, plain agriculture requires ploughing with a pair of animals. For over two-thirds of the tribal population in the country, agriculture is the means of survival. However, the agriculture as practiced in tribal India is simple, less productive, and at the subsistence level. The tribal cultivators hardly could meet their day-to-day needs. They cultivate paddy in low-lying lands, while in high lands, coarse grains, pulses, millets, etc. are cultivated. Their agricultural implements are indigenous and locally made. A few use cow dung and modern high-yielding varieties, chemical fertilizers and pesticides in cultivation. The Khasis and Jayantiyas of Meghalaya, Khasas and Tharus of the Rai region, Kinuras, Pangawalas of Himachal Pradesh region, Bhumiji, Koras, Bhuyas, Santals, Mundas, Oraons, Hos, Kharwars, Baigas, Gonds in the Middle India, numerous tribes in other regions belong to this category of tribes. Let us now see the simple artisan type of tribes. In India, a number of tribes depend on crafts and cottage industries for survival. They are engaged in activities such as basket making, making of iron and wooden tools, spinning and weaving, metalwork, etc. Any tribe belonging to this category specializes in a specific craft. They use simple tools in their day-to-day work. These tribes are found among the population of other tribes and they have interdependent relationship with them. They live in mixed tribal villages and generally have no exclusive villages of their own. They sell their finished products in the periodical markets. They are engaged in a variety of crafts and artwork. For instance, the Gujars of Kashmir and Kinauris of Himachal Pradesh make wooden products. The Kanjars of Uttar Pradesh make baskets and ropes. The Lohars, Karmalis, Chikbakbariks, and Mahalis are making agricultural implements for agricultural tribes. The Kotas of Tamil Nadu are carpenters, blacksmiths, goldsmiths, and potters all at once. Let us now see the pastoral and cattle herder type of tribes. Pastoralism involves herding or rearing cattle such as cow, buffalo, sheep, goats, etc. Thus, pastoralists are those people who completely or partially depend on the cattle rearing for their subsistence. The Todas of Nilgiris, the Gujars, the Bakarwals, Gadis, and Jards of Himachal Pradesh are purely pastoralists. The Middle Indian tribes of Negasias are pastoralists to some extent. The tribes belonging to this type have very less population. The pastoralists in different regions of the country have adapted themselves to their changing environments in different ways. Some eke out their living by selling milk and milk products, wool, hair, etc., while others earn by selling livestock. A brief description of the Todas of Tamil Nadu would give a better understanding on the lifestyle of pastoralists. The Todas are fully devoted to their buffaloes, and their occupation is simply taking care of them. Their society, culture, religion, and economy revolve around their buffaloes. A few have taken cultivation, but still most of them are herders. Let us now see the folk artist type of tribes. Tribes living on folk arts such as singing and dancing, music, boarding, acrobatics, conjuring, snake charming, etc., belong to this category. These numerically small folk artist tribes depend on the larger tribes and are found along with them. The Nats and Saperas in North India, Mundupattas and Kelas of Orissa, Pardhans and Ojhas of Jharkhand, Madarians, Pamulas, Garodis of Andhra Pradesh, etc., are some of the tribes belonging to this category. For instance, the Nats perform acrobatics, singing and dancing, and subsist on them. On the other hand, the Kalbelas of Rajasthan, popularly known as Saperas, earn primarily their livelihood on snake charming, dancing, singing, and conjuring. Let us understand the agricultural and non agricultural labor type of tribes. There is no single tribe that can be included under the agricultural labor or industrial labor type. Yet, some of the members of agricultural and artisan tribes have taken the avenues of employment in agriculture and industries as casual laborers. Agricultural development on the one hand and industrialization in the tribal region on the other has contributed to the emergence of these type of tribal people in the country. Nearly 20% of the scheduled tribes working population depend on agricultural wage for survival, while 4.4% of the tribal workforce depends on industrial wage labor for survival. The tribal agricultural laborers mostly work in their own locality within a radius of a few kilometers. On the other hand, non agricultural or industrial laborers work in different industries. Most of the industrial laborers are generally seasonal migrants to nearby or distant towns, mines, mills, and tea gardens, and work as wage laborers in railway and road construction, forestry, civil work, etc. Sometimes they move in these works in distant locations in bands, inclusive of both genders. Tribal agricultural labor was found wherever there was high incidence of indebtedness and land alienation. The non agricultural labor type of tribal households could be located in the states of Jharkhand, Orissa, West Bengal, and Madhya Pradesh, where industrialization has spread. Interestingly, the members of the Jharkhand tribes are engaged as laborers in tea gardens of Assam and serve in forestry and construction work in Andaman Islands. Let us now see the skilled white collar job and traders type of tribes. Educational advancement, spread of Christianity, reservation policy of Government of India, etc., have prompted a significant proportion of the members to take some of the skilled white collar jobs and trades of different kinds. Such skilled white collar workers could be found all over the country. Many individuals and households belonging to the tribes could be observed working in government offices, hospitals, factories, and business enterprises. Some are engaged in business activities. The Bhotias of Indo-Tibetan border, the Valmikis, the hikers of Andhra Pradesh, and a few individuals from different tribes depend on trade for their sustenance. About 1% of the working population of scheduled tribes depend on trade. Let us understand the economic change in tribal India. Tribal economies in India are in transitions. Their exposures to a number of exogenous factors contributed a change to them. They adapt to the modern economic forces acquire economic new activities, adopt modern technology and means, and are geared towards achieving the goal of development. There are a number of factors that can be attributed to change in the economic structure and functions of tribes in India. The chief among them are educational expansion, transportation and communication, cooperatives, and commercial banks. In addition to these, the government policy, programs, and development interventions have also contributed to economic changes. The following five interrelated processes of economic change are happening among the major tribes in India in response to forces of modernization. Number one is occupational change, modern occupations replacing the traditional ones. Number two is subsistence to commercialization. Number three is market integration and commoditization. Number four is barter to monetary exchange. And number five is proletarianization, de-peasantization, and impoverishment. Let us see these factors one by one. The first factor is occupational change, modern occupations replacing the traditional ones. As we know, tribal economies are simple, primary producing economies. Most of the people depend on land and forest for their livelihood. In response to the initiatives of central and state governments, the tribal people are changing their economic activities. A number of members of tribes also have taken up modern occupations increasingly. Some of the tribes slowly switch over from their traditional to settled cultivation as shifting cultivation is less remunerative and ecologically destructive. Some other tribes who are traditionally hunting are also taking up the practice of cultivation in addition to their traditional occupation. As we have seen in the previous section, as a consequence of educational advancement, many members of the tribes have taken up white collar jobs. As a consequence of marginalization in agriculture, some have become agricultural or industrial wage earners. The second factor for tribal economic change is subsistence to commercialization. The tribal economies over a long period were stagnant and were of subsistent type. The tribal people's production and acquisition of goods and services were concerned with the household consumption. There was hardly any significant surplus with them. There was no profit motive and motivation for saving among them. This has changed much in response to their increased interaction with the non-tribal economy. The development of physical infrastructure, especially road, transport, and communication, facilitates in the tribal areas. Communication facilities in the tribal areas, exposure to agricultural extension agencies, etc., have contributed to the emergence of commercial aptitude among many tribes in India. Nowadays, many of them produce crops or acquire goods from the forests for the purpose of selling in the local market. The cropping patterns in the tribal regions have experienced a shift from food crops, primarily meant for household consumption, towards commercial crops such as potatoes, green vegetables, and fruits, which are meant for markets. Vidyarthi and Rai have observed the sale of minor forest produces like firewood, toothsticks, seasonal fruits, broom grass, kendu leaves by the tribals in the Jharkhand. The third factor for economic change among the tribal is market integration and commoditization. Tribal people were by and large out of the ambit of national and global market forces as their interaction was minimal. But the market forces have penetrated into the tribal areas through the channels of road, transport, communication, as well as agencies of banks, cooperatives, merchants, moneylenders, etc. Increasingly, they are absorbed into the network structure of market. Their day-to-day economic activities are affected by the market forces. They are affected by the changes in the price levels. They look at the goods and services as commodities to be sold or purchased. Many of them have learned the process of bargaining, selling, and purchasing, which are akin to the modern marketplaces. The fourth factor for change in tribal economy is barter to monetary exchange. Monetization is one of the major changes that are taking place in the tribal economies of India. It is simply the process of switchover from traditional barter system of exchange to money based transactions. Most of the tribes were neither aware nor used money in their economic transaction as a measure of the value of their goods and services. The tribal people's interaction with the outer economy through periodical markets and establishment of cooperative and commercial banks and institutions have all contributed the spread of money as most popular medium of exchange of goods and services in the tribal India. Monetization and market penetration reinforce each other in the tribal economy. The fifth factor for the change in the economy of tribals is proletarianization, de-peasantization, and impoverishment. These processes of economic modernization have significant impact on the economic life, livelihood, and living conditions of the people. The economic integration of tribals, market penetration, commoditization, and commercialization have contributed to economic decline of tribes. Economic decline of tribal people have taken place because many of the tribals have become indebted, alienated their land, some have become landless or have become bonded laborers. Economic modernization in the tribal areas have had contributed to poverty, rather economic development in the tribal India. The non-tribal moneylenders, merchants, and at times forest officials have exploited tribals and many times deprived them of their land and livelihood, though there are constitutional mechanisms for their protection. In spite of implementation of 10 5-year plans, unfortunately tribals constitute the most economically marginalized citizens of our democratic republic. Tribal masses and their leaders have responded to their economic crisis in ways of creative movements and struggles. In the wake of new economic policy, the fragile simple tribal economies are increasingly integrated with global economies, having far reaching consequences of the livelihood and living conditions of the people. So, learners, in today's session, I have explained the economic classification of tribes in India. I have also discussed the factors and processes of economic change and their implication for living conditions of tribal masses. Thank you.